Welcome back to In the Shop, where we bring you the tools, strategies, and leaders shaping the future of automotive retail. I'm your host, Sean Rains, and today we're tackling a topic that every service department's feeling right now. They're always feeling it, actually, whether they recognize that or not. Missed calls, staffing challenges, and really a lot of hidden revenue that's sitting in your service lane. Joining me today is Matt Raymond, the COO at Bowtie Auto Solutions. And specifically today, we're talking about Kayman Direct. Matt and his team are helping dealerships rethink how they handle inbound and outbound service communication, not just answering calls, but capturing opportunities, driving appointments, and ultimately increasing fixed ops revenue. We're going to break down what's really happening behind the scenes when calls go unanswered, why traditional BDC models are struggling, and how a more scalable, data-driven approach is helping dealers improve both customer experience and profitability. If you've ever wondered how much revenue your store might be losing from missed opportunities or what it would look like to fix it, you definitely don't want to miss this conversation. Welcome, Matt. How are you?
Good, Sean. How are you doing today?
Doing great. And looking forward to this conversation. It always starts in the beginning, and that is probably the easiest question for you, which is, what is Kayman Direct?
Yeah, great question. So obviously, you guys know me from Bowtie Solutions. We started Bowtie Solutions just over 3 years ago. This past fall, we acquired another company based out of Colorado called Kayman Direct. They aligned with like our values and their market position, but they were ready to get out of the call center world. So we flew out to Colorado, met their team, went around and met a lot of their client base too. And we decided it was going to be a good acquisition for us. So we acquired Kayman Direct, and through that process came the ability to be in the Ford shop also.
Nice. Well, next thing I want to ask you a little bit about, which I think starts to get interesting for dealers, is in your experience, what are the most costly consequences of missed calls in the service department?
Yeah, great question. The biggest thing I start with when we talk about missed calls is knowing the number of calls that you're missing. Most dealerships, when they sign on with us, will give us a total number of calls they think they're getting for the month, and we quickly will start outpacing that. We had one dealer, as an example, told us that we'd see about 1,000 calls in a month. Within the first 5 days, we had already had 966 phone calls for them. So we put real numbers behind what we're going to be showing them for data each month. And then on that is that if there is a missed call, a dropped call, customer hangs up, loses connection, whatever it might be, how are you getting back a hold of that person? What are you doing to ensure that you're following up with that person? And that's the next step of, the missed calls and how we achieve results there too.
Mm-hmm. How do you diagnose where a dealership's service communications are starting to break down or maybe completely already broken?
Yeah. So I chuckle because usually our service BDC agents are really good at figuring that out real quickly. They're answering the phones, they're calling over to connect the customers. We do all warm transfers with our clients. And if the client doesn't answer, we'll turn around and send over a TO to them that can go to different people on distribution lists. And inevitably the breakdown becomes when clients have to start calling in multiple times to get answers. And so we've put things in place that prevent the client having to call, that our dealership partners have their clients having to call back multiple times to get an answer. And it really is just a game of phone tag, right? Client calls the dealer doesn't answer, dealer calls back, client doesn't answer, and then we end up in that vicious cycle. And so we have things in place to solve for that, to knock down the number of phone calls that come in.
Yeah, it's so critically important. I mean, all that we're talking about today in the service department is where the place where you don't want to provide a terrible experience, where you don't want those things to break down, because when you lose people in service, the likelihood that you've lost them forever is pretty high. So it's great to hear that you have something in place that helps dealers with what they probably feel like are some of the basics, and they probably don't. I'm guessing that you guys see this all the time, where dealers feel like they're pretty buttoned up, but maybe not so much. What does it really cost to run an internal service BDC? I know a lot of dealers ask about this. If I'm going to do this internally, what does it really cost to run that inside the dealership, and how do you compare that to outsourcing?
Yeah, great question on that. So, I mean, you and I have known each other for years. I ran a BDC up in Northeast Pennsylvania. I ran one in North Carolina. We were up to 32 agents total between sales and service in North Carolina. And so one of the things that it costs, and let's just pretend they're a small little dealership, let's say it's a small Ford store. If you got to figure you need 1.5 people for every person you need, because there's going to be people that have vacation time, days off, right? Most dealerships are open anywhere from 60 to 64 hours a week. And so if you're going to work somebody 40 hours a week, well, you need to cover those other 24. And so you start looking at that number. So I always use 1.5. And, if I look at average wages and things like that, it roughly costs a dealership anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 a month to run an in-house service BDC. And that's nobody coming down with any major colds, sicknesses, or being out of work for extended periods of time.
Hmm. Is there, in the future of AI, is there a place where you feel like it might have an influence on, outsourcing making more financial sense?
Yeah, I think it's going to make a lot of financial sense. And I was talking to a dealer the other day about this. If you take a dealership, let's say they get 1,000 calls a month and pretend they don't have Bowtie or AI, and they plug AI in, and of those numbers, even in the best case, let's just say 40% of those people are good with transacting through AI, but the other 60% need a live human. That's great. You've got a BDC in house. They'll catch 60% of those phone calls. The issue is you're paying them 100% of the time they're there. You're not paying them for the 60%. So if you outsource it, what you then start paying for is the 60% of the calls that they would get. And so you've freed up the capital inside, plus you've got AI handling it, we'll call it 100% of the time, even though it might only be able to complete the transaction through 60 or 40% of it.
Hmm. Now, I know a lot of dealers should be even more interested in reporting than they are, but most of them understand that great reporting is essential to operating as efficiently and profitably as they possibly can. So, the next thing I wanted to ask you about is on reports. Like, how do you guys deliver them? And I guess maybe just the basics of what do they include? What do you guys report on?
Yeah. So on the nightly reports, we have inbound and outbound reports. We separate them because we never want to crisscross that data. And we'll tell them the number of calls we got for the inbound side, the appointments that were set, how many status checks or transfers needed to happen. And then on the outbound side, we'll give them a report of customers that we've reached out to and, the number of people that have set appointments, as well as the list of people that no longer live in the market, do not own the vehicle, so they can update their DMSs correctly. And then we provide them a monthly report that's live, and that just shows them total number of calls, appointments set, things like that. And that's both inbound and outbound. The other thing now that we have integration with, several different DMSs, whether it's through like an Authenticom or through, the DMS itself. And we can start giving matchback reports. So we can give a dealer a report now that shows, hey, we reached out to 1,000 people this month. Of that 1,000 people we've reached out to, the people that showed up spent a total of $25,000. But of that $25,000, these 15,000 could be attributed to our agent actually talked to that customer on the phone and scheduled that appointment. The other 10,000 are people that would have received that, campaign, offer, whatever it might be, and they came in and transacted that month anyways, right? Because you and I know in the industry, there's a lot of credit that tries to get taken by everybody for everything that happens. And in reality, we're just saying, hey, we know we talked to these people and actually scheduled them for an appointment. However, based upon the campaign we ran, here's the total dollar amount that you made. Whether it was, some of these people could have just been already scheduled for an appointment to come in.
Hmm. Yeah, attribution drives me crazy, man. In the digital marketing realm, before starting Hired Guns, it would already was driving me crazy because I think there's something about it that's broken, and I think that thing is that what you just mentioned, which is oftentimes it becomes a tool that's used to point blame or take recognition, and what ends up happening is the business, in this case dealerships, become very focused on a goal that isn't as important when they should be thinking about overarching. What you're talking about is the how much revenue came into the dealership, how many dollars, what kind of profitability are we pushing in this collective effort versus trying to get to this granular level so somebody can say, hey, that's all me. So I love that approach. Let's talk a little bit about, um, uh, let's just say a dealer says this is the right solution for us. I'm sure you guys have an onboarding process. What does it look like when somebody gets through onboarding? How fast can they really kind of hit the gas with you guys?
Yeah, so we had a dealership sign the contract this past Tuesday, and next Tuesday we'll be out there live and onboarding them. They're ready to go today. If they had wanted to pull the trigger today, we could go live. So it depends on how busy we are with onboarding, but usually on the inbound side we can turn it around in 2 to 5 business days. On the outbound side, I like to tell dealers it's closer to 7 to 14 business days, and that's because we need to collect a W-9 from the dealer, reach out to all the carriers to register the phone lines to say, hey, we're doing work for this dealership. Please don't flag us as spam. Perfect world that would never happen. Not a perfect world we live in. So every month we're constantly, going and registering with the carriers to ensure that we're, doing all we can to stay off the spam lists. And we've got some little tricks that help on that end. But over time, the more we call, the more customers answer, the more we have relevant, kind of campaigns and conversations, the less likely we are to end up on spam anyways. But answer your question, 2 to 5 business days on inbound and 7 to 10 business days on outbound.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's quick. And assuming that the dealer is that anxious to start quickly, they're going to be motivated to get you the, like you said, W-9. There's always a series of kind of foundational elements when you're starting those business relationships, but then, anywhere from a couple of days to maybe 10 days, that's like, 2 weeks of business. That's fast actually. So, I'm sure dealers will really like to, know that that can be a very quick solution that starts very, very quickly. There aren't a whole lot of services that can turn around quite as fast as dealers might need them or want them to. This next thing I want to ask you about, it kind of goes back to AI a little bit, and it might be relative to what we talked about a little bit a couple of questions ago. But what role do you think AI is going to play, and automation, right? Which are they're kind of they're not interchangeable; they're a bit different. But what role do you think AI and automation play, and where will the human expertise, human in the loop is always important in automotive? Where is that going to remain essential?
Yeah. So on the AI side, it's going to be great for scheduling oil changes, tire rotation, some basic services that are quick and easy to schedule. But the human side of it's going to come in with the empathy and thinking outside the box. Some of the things we're working on behind the scenes right now is we have AI monitoring and auditing all our calls, and we've got it looking for keywords. So things like I had a Volkswagen dealership. They had done an update from Volkswagen Corporate, and it wiped out over 366 infotainment centers that we know of. And so we had customers calling in. AI would have booked those appointments all day long. And so we knew that we couldn't do it because there was no fix at the time. And so we were able to put those customers into a status and then reach out when the fix was there, right? The other side of it is every so often, and we see this all the time with mobile recalls with Ford, right? There's a certain number of parts that they have available, and all of a sudden we can't do that recall anymore. So being able to just pivot quickly, and that's what our humans are looking for is, wait, is something different here? Mrs. Smith calls in. It's a really busy Ford dealership. She's a loyal customer, and it turns into, she goes, hey, I need to come in and get a battery, right? AI recognizes words, come in, battery, goes to schedule. Mrs. Smith, I can get you in next Thursday. She's like, well, I'm supposed to go to my kid. He's graduating from the Naval Academy this week. I want to see it. And that's where we've got humans in the background. I mean, right now we've got humans doing the call, but AI coming in to try to take over the humans. We've got humans in the background looking at that and going, hold on. This is Mrs. Smith. We can send the mobile unit out to her to put a battery in her car, and Ford's making a real big push on this mobile service, and they're doing a great job with it. And so, that's where the human's going to be able to recognize, hey, I can flip this person to a mobile service versus keeping it, as what the customer thought they needed to come in.
Mhm.
And vice versa, right? Maybe mobile takes off so much that people are like, oh, I want the mobile service to come. Like, well, we're a week out. And it's like, well, we have a whole bunch of technicians sitting around the shop right now because we're out of trucks waiting for the new one to come in. And we can get
Yeah.
you in right now if you can just drive down here, or we'll come pick up your car and bring it in.
It's such a great customer experience to be able to provide to people. I've got a friend who is a Lincoln dealer up the road in Fort Worth, and his store offers this type of mobile service. And the reviews that are written about that experience and how well his team does is also something worth noting. As dealers listen to this conversation and get to know your company and the services you offer, it also brilliantly ties into things that the dealership might already have, in way of their capabilities of how they provide services. Makes all the sense in the world. So I love that. That's a great insight. Well, I want to ask you a little bit about promotions.
Mhm.
Anytime you start talking about BDC type services, you think of promotions that can be run. What are you seeing that's working? What are the promotions that you maybe, and this can change sometimes based on what's going on in the market. But what do you see that's kind of working well, and maybe promotions that don't?
Yeah. So if I was in a dealership right now and I was doing this and I called myself and asked me what would do, get rid of the stupid percentages. The average customer can't calculate percentages. And don't talk about a low price oil change without telling them what it was. Don't talk about any kind of low price service without talking about what it was, right? Because nothing's good or bad until it's compared. So right now, the biggest success we see from dealers is when they run, like I'll just use oil change offers. If they run an oil change promotion, and let's say they charge $129.99 a month, or sorry, not a month, for the service, and they discount it down to $79.99, and they say, save $50, man, that's great, and they can start booking appointments. To give you an example, we had a dealer last month. They gave us about 1,500 customers that were on an inactive list. They ran a really aggressive oil offer. It was just over $50 savings, but we did the was-is pricing, set 151 appointments for them.
Mm, I totally believe that because I'm a guy who services my truck at the dealership, and I've been on a particular manufacturer package, warranty package for a long time, which I finally got to the end of after a certain number of miles and years. And so that exact example of promotion is something that I would be motivated by. And I'm probably on that dealership's, hey, you better figure this out. I'm probably in a status like that. But if they don't have you, I don't know if they'll be making the right move. We just talked about this a little bit. I just want to know if you have any. I'm kind of exhausting any of your other thoughts on mobile service and pickup delivery. Talked about it a little bit. Any other thoughts there that you want to emphasize?
Yeah. I would again, if this was my dealership, I would cut the dealership waiting room out and I'd put a couple more lifts in there and I would hire people to do nothing but pickup and deliveries all day long. I mean, I don't drive a Ford. My wife and I have 3 of the same brand cars just because of where I started in the industry. We've got all those cars still. And this dealer has never offered to do pickup and delivery. And every time I go, they're like, are you sure you want to wait? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get some work done. I don't tell them what I do because I know they have a really big call center. They've got 30 plus stores, but I sit in there and I listen and I watch and hear what the customers' frustrations are. And there's usually at the high times, 15 to 20 people sitting in the lobby because nobody wants to leave their car for too long. They do a phenomenal video walk around. They'll bring you out to the car and show you what's leaking or creaking or whatever it is. The advisors are very interactive. The whole process is great. Man, if you would just pick my car up at my house and drop it off, you would save me from having to do this 3 times, once for my daughter, once for me, and once for my wife.
Mm, yeah, I can relate to that. And we do have a Ford in the family. But what you just described is that's a very common thing in a lot of households. And adding a convenience like that, especially in this instant gratification world that we all live in, it's a kind of a no-brainer for dealers. But again, you also have to have the right services and the right partnerships of people that actually help make those things. It's almost like just multiplying the value of things that you have. And if you guys are in a store, you certainly would want to encourage the dealership if they have that service to hit the gas
Yep.
and utilize it even more. Well, I mean, the time flies when we have conversations like this. So I'm at the last thing that I wanted to ask you about, but I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. That is around the major areas that are impacting dealerships, with specifically with regards to inbound call volume, staffing, and their outbound calls, hitting goals, increasing revenue. These are the things that, especially as it relates to service, that's on dealers' minds. And people are keeping their cars longer than ever before. So I'm just wanting to get your thoughts in general about those areas that are really impacting the dealerships.
Yeah. People are gonna, like you said, people are going to hang on to their cars longer. They're calling in to get service. I've heard people say, if you don't grab the phone, they're going to go somewhere else. I believe there's customers that have a loyalty to the dealership. And I'll say this to dealers: you're not losing customers because you missed the call. You're losing customers because you never cared to call them back. And that's a big thing, is making sure you're getting back a hold of people, because customers understand. Like, I mean, Monday mornings, I can show you call metrics that are through the roof on a Monday morning. Like, we have a rule, like, there's no calling out on Monday. Like, bring your IV bag and come on into work, like with your hospital, gurney on, but, joke about it. But, it's Monday, right? But by Friday afternoon, what are you doing? And this is where I tell dealers that, like, and this isn't a pitch for Bowtie, but like, you need all hands on deck on Monday, but on Friday, you can't lay people off. So what are you doing to continue to have people come in? And that's where the proactive outreach comes. That's where listening to what your customers are saying. What are they looking for? What are your local, independents doing for oil change prices? Basic maintenances. How do you get them in? What's your value add? Can you pick up and drop off? Will you, do the service at their house? What separates you from the different companies out there? And then, one of the things we talk about all the time is, an agent will end up on the phone with a customer and they're like, oh, I go to, the local garage down the street. And like, well, I understand that, but you realize our agents or our technicians are all factory trained and certified. And with that, our prices are also very comparable and aggressive. What's your current oil change there? And they might be like, oh, I'm paying $89.95. I'm like, well, right now we're running a website special for $79.95. And like, really? I'll give you guys a shot, and I think that's the one thing that we love to work on at Bowtie, is getting customers back in. I love going after those inactive and defecting customers and bringing them back and giving the dealership a chance to continue to have repeat customers over and over again.
Yeah, I love that. Service retention is huge, always has been, always should be. And you guys clearly are a great solution to help dealers with that, among all of these other nuanced areas of this type of service. So thank you very much for taking the time today, man. I really appreciate you jumping on the show in the shop. It's great to learn about what Bowtie is doing in Kayman Direct. You're clearly helping dealers take control of their service communications and turn missed opportunities into measurable results. And I know that that's music to every dealer's ears. So I think one of the biggest takeaways is kind of simple. You can't fix what you're not measuring. You're talking about things about like the inbound calls. You have no control over that. You can't predict that, right? So when you start looking at things like call volume and answer rates and your outbound engagement, right, which you do control, it becomes really clear how much opportunity really exists in the service lane. So to the audience, to all you dealers out there, thanks for joining us in the shop. We appreciate your time and never want to waste it. If you want to learn more about what Matt and his team are doing, or see how this could apply to your store, we'll make your way over to theshop.com. That's your go-to marketplace for Ford dealers and Lincoln retailers. We will be back soon with more episodes featuring the trusted partners who help dealers run smarter, accelerate growth, and stay ahead in this ever-changing market. And as always, thanks for tuning in to In the Shop. If you found today's episode valuable, well, subscribe, especially if you're on that YouTube channel, and share it with your team. Share it with somebody who actually would benefit from this conversation. And we will see you next time right back here in the shop. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.